So, physical features in a woman. That's going to be our video, and we're going to see why men are fat phobic because they're such bad people. So, yeah, let's get into it. Get into it.
Now we're going to talk about physical features within
Got
women.
my
Now, this
headphones
part I
on.
think is the most interesting because it has way
Scripted, by the
more
way.
data. I'm going to be now this.
All right, let's go.
Now we're going to talk about physical features within women. Now, this part I think is the most interesting because it has way more data. I'm going to be discussing a lot about the information that I found from an article which was called Dispelling Beauty Lies, The Truth About Feminine Beauty. So what they did in this article is quite a good read. I'd really suggest checking it out. They basically explored what men across the world found attractive, and they also compared it from like thousands of years ago. And what they generally concluded was that men have been attracted to the same type of women for literally thousands of years. Like,
You know what's funny? We never needed science for this to be proven. You know, that's the annoying part. We never really needed science to explain this or to basically that we as men like certain features of women. If you take a buff guy on a rock, most likely if we were to just blindly describe what we find attractive in certain women and stuff like that, what will happen is it's going to be obvious. It's going to be straight up. We want certain things. And yet a lot of people want to deny that. They just call us fatphobic and whatnot. But yeah, she's right. We've been attracted to the same things. Because yes, there are certain sacrifices that you have to make, but you know, you still, if you're given the option to get the ideal you would get it, and it's not the growth that we've been seeing in these but then I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's continue. Let's see what she has to say.
men's taste in women has never changed. So the way that they looked at this was they first looked at goddesses, so love goddesses from different parts of the world. And so they looked at different countries like India, Cambodia, Venezuela, Persia, Indonesia, Spain, Greece, and France. So they really got their sample size. And what they noticed within all of the love goddesses is that they all look very similar. So I'm going to show as many of the pictures as I can on here of the examples that they gave, but a lot of them I won't be able to because YouTube will fight me because they're nude, so they're quite X-rated. But the more PG ones, I'll share with you the examples. But they had loads of examples. So they looked at all these goddesses, right? And what they noticed within the goddesses is they all had very, very similar body types, even though these were goddesses from completely different countries and from completely different times. And some of these statues are thousands of years old. And what they noticed within these goddesses, they all had hourglass figures. They all had small waists and pronounced hips. They had larger than average breasts, and they were fairly slim but not skinny. Then they also looked at popular erotic paintings from the 19th century.
All right, so these are the goddesses that these people believed in or whatnot. I'm not trying to disprove it or anything. I'm just saying that's what they believed in, right? And the illustrations that they had for these women, none of them are fat, right? And this is before the whole social conditioning, before the capitalist patriarchy, before all that. These are the designs that were there, and these were based on the ideal. They were saying, okay, what would the ideal woman be? Just in general, they didn't hate any women, and at the time, people could not be really fat. Let's be honest. So there wasn't a fat person that they were trying to exclude or anything. They just drew the ideal, right? And this is basically like attraction is not a choice. It's just not a choice. And when you think of the most erotic looking women, that's what you're going to get, right? So go.
And so they looked at countries like Italy, America, France, and what they noticed that was within these paintings, they also had very similar body types. So it was the hourglass figure again, slim but not skinny, big breasts, peachy bum bums. They also saw that women within the Victorian era.
Do you know what's this girl is actually from Zimbabwe. I've watched a few of her videos and I like her channel. And I'm Zimbabwean as well. And the way she said bum bum, oh, that was so not Zimbabwean. Like that was funny. I have to hear that again one more time, then we can go.
Paintings, they also had very similar body types. So it was the hourglass figure again, slim but not skinny, big breasts, peachy bum bums. They also saw that women within the Victorian era also praised a very similar body type, and this is the reason why they wore things like corsets, bustels, petticoats, because these pieces would make their waists smaller, would make their hips areas and their derrieres a little bit bigger, and it kind of accentuated this idea of like an hourglass form. They also had a look at more classic vintage actresses, and they found that they too would wear clothes to accentuate a more hourglass shaped figure. And what they also discussed with this is that it's not so much that the hourglass has been sexualized that we find it sexy, because even with the vintage models, even though they were dressed in a more elegant, more classy way, we still found it very attractive, even though they were fully clothed.
That's another thing. That's another thing. I remember, and this is weird, but this is the funny part about Instagram, right? Because Instagram, I don't know. Maybe we can actually do a social experiment because my For You page for Instagram is just crazy. The type of stuff I see on my For You page for Instagram is just crazy. But then what she's saying is basically, facts. Because I remember like a few years ago, let's just say 3, 4 years ago, when you go to my For You page on my Instagram, what will happen is I would notice, oh, it's called the explore page. I don't know. But then I would notice one thing that the girls that I was seeing, the ones that are getting a lot of attention, then the ones that you're going to see, were very slim and very slender. There were still those chicks that were, big bust and all that stuff. But it was one of those things where it was still that stuff. And a few years ago, these girls were for the most part dressed, right? And I remember me and my friends sometimes we just take screenshots and send. I'm saying, dude, look at this chick, man. She's fresh, and she was fully clothed. She doesn't have to be naked, and that's the other thing. They will try to remove, these bikini models. I remember in the UK they did that. They removed the bikini models and the grid girls because they were dressed a certain way to be a lot more sexy, and they didn't like that. And then no, they were saying it's because they are sexualized, but they don't have to be dressed like that. As long as I can actually tell that your body is a slender fit, I mean, you're going to be cool. But then, if, like I said, if I go to my For You page, like my Explore page or whatever, this thing is embarrassing me. Why is it not showing? Well, exactly. Now you're actually seeing. So these are the types of pictures that you see. You see 900, 500 likes, all that. And then there's this stuff, 3,000, landing, this is like 3,000, but let's open this one and see if she has one where she's not bent over. Exactly, you see? So it's hourglass figure. Well, my camera is actually kind of blocking the view there. Oopsies, my bad. Let's put that back. Then remove this one, right? As you can see what I'm saying. So yes, please do not go and harass these people if you see this. But basically, yeah, that's basically it. Usually that's what was noticed about these people. So then, if you're getting these types of people getting all the attention, that basically should mean that, naturally that's how it is. But then fat phobia because she's not fat, right? So let's go on.
Which shows that men just generally gravitate toward this body type. It doesn't have to be presented in a hypersexual way for them to find it attractive. When I tell you these people did their research, they also showed examples of cartoons from recent decades and found that these cartoons also had these kind of body types of like large
What did you
breasts or like a
expect?
really small waist and wider hips, etc. Although granted, of course, in a slightly more exaggerated form because they are cartoons. So from all of these examples, what they were able to conclude is that men have generally found the same type of woman attractive for thousands of years. When men have the freedom to portray women in the most beautiful form or in the most ideal form, they end up creating the same type of woman over and over and over again. They also discussed cultural differences because oftentimes we hear people saying, well, your attractions are culturally influenced, they're influenced by your society, what's
And this one I hate. I watch a lot of podcasts, right? And when they bring up the topic of fat phobia, whatnot, they usually use that idea that says that, well, if you go to this African country or if you go to this, the African people, for the most part, a lot of us are way too poor to be fat. That's number one. And number two, that was a joke. Of course, people here can be fat, but then most people aren't. And the people that are getting all the attention, like especially in my country where there's so many people who are just standing around in the city center, just doing nothing. When they see a fat chick passing by, maybe one guy out of the 20 that are there is going to be like, whoa. But then when a slim figure just walking by with a big bum and small waist and stuff like that, bum bum, that girl is going to get a lot of attention. They're going to holler at her as much as they can. That's normal. I've seen it so many times. I've seen it so many times happening, and yeah, that's basically it. I don't know why it's difficult. It puts you in where you have to work. You have to get yourself off the food and just go on and what do you call it? And you just, go on, eat, sleep, get fat, and also expect people to like you or to find you attractive. But again, attraction is not a choice. And she actually talks about this a lot in the first parts of the video. So go watch it, and I'll put the link in the description. Hopefully, I don't forget. But I'll put the link in the description for that.
attractive here, is not attractive there. And they actually managed to disprove that, because what they found was that cultural variations do exist, but they are much, much smaller than people think they are. When they asked people from different cultures, in this example that they provided, they compared Japanese men and American men, where the women look very, very different. So this is what the average Japanese woman looks like, and this is what the average American woman looks like. Now, when they asked the Japanese men and the American men to describe their ideal female, guess what happened? Go on. Take a guess. The Japanese men and the American men, when they both described their ideal woman in terms of what features she had, their ideals looked more similar than what the women actually look like in their own countries. So this does poke a lot of holes into the idea that your society or your culture.
And that's the thing that people need to understand, the ideal, because here's how it works. My ideal would be to drive the very expensive, or it's not really that expensive in terms of expensive cars, but let's say for me, it's super expensive. I can't afford that. If I wanted a Mustang Shelby 2008, GT500, that Mustang, I can't afford anything that's even half that car, right? That's my ideal, but I know I can't get that, so I'm not going to get depressed and say that the the car dealership is poor phobic or something. I'm not going to say that. What I'm going to basically say is, okay, fine, let me get myself a Corolla because that's the car I drive. So I got myself a Corolla. I'm cool. That's basically it. I compromised. It matches most of the requirements I need from a car. It has to get me from point A to point B. I still gotta look cool doing it. And also, I don't know, I like looking at it, which I do. So that's enough. That's not, and I know that the comparison is way too, like the gap is way too big. But then it goes the same in dating. I'm not going to be able to date, like one of my celebrity crushes is I can't use that one again. Let's change it. This time it's going to be Becky G, right? I think Becky G is super hot. I can't get her. And let's say I met a Becky G clone, but she's not famous and all that. And I tried to holler at her and she doesn't want me. Cool. I move on to someone who might want me. And she might not be my ideal, but then she might still meet certain requirements that I want in a girl. So besides looks, there are things like her personality and how she is herself and stuff like that. Then there are compromises that we make. We'll never get the ideal. And for the few people that do get the ideal, then good for them, but most people can't.
Culture is what influences your attractions. And it does imply that it's actually influenced by biology, because how is it possible that men from two completely different cultures, where the women look completely different, still manage to create an ideal outside of their own cultures, but yet is very similar to each other? So to get an even deeper look into the physical preferences that men had, they also looked into the data on sex dolls. And so this was a perfect way to get a lot of data on what men find attractive, because men have no reason to lie. They're going to have to pay for this, right? So why would they not create their ideal woman? What they found from the data on sex dolls is that overwhelmingly across countries, men preferred very similar features, and the features that they preferred were very similar to the statues from thousands of years ago and very similar to the paintings as well. So when it came to the sex dolls that they liked, they preferred to design her to have an hourglass figure, large breasts, long hair with facial symmetry, and a slim figure and a nice thick peachy round bum. So that is typically what men are attracted to across countries. Now, of course, there are always exceptions to every single rule, and I hope everyone understands that within this video I am speaking about averages. I'm not speaking about the exceptions, I'm speaking about the averages. So everything that I'm saying doesn't apply to every single woman, and everything that I'm saying doesn't apply to every single man, but this is just the majority of the people. Another really interesting thing that they spoke about as well is how heterosexual men's preferences are very poorly represented within the mainstream. And they also discuss how this is negative for women because it confuses us. It confuses women because women don't know what men find attractive, because they're getting a lot of their information on what's beautiful from the fashion industry and the beauty industry. But the problem with that is that most of the people who work in the fashion and beauty industry are gay men and women. This is funny to me.
So this is the problem. I think she hit the nail on the coffin, however you say that. Because here's the thing. If the people that are pushing this idea of attractiveness, what should be attractive, what should not be attractive, are not the real target audience for what they're really talking about. Like if I'm going to be buying a car, but I'd like, well, maybe car is a very terrible example to follow through. But let's say you're trying to buy a specific type of a computer, but then you're talking to a smartphone community. Of course, you're not going to get favorable data from that. So I think that was the issue that came in with this show. If it's a gay dude, well, the gay dude might know, but then they're far more compassionate, and then the women are way more compassionate than the gay dudes. So then obviously they're going to be a little bit more accepting. So when a woman says, I'm fat, people don't like me, and then obviously it's going to be pushed so that, people should like that. But for the most part, people don't like that. They just don't. And as a dude, they always say that dudes will just get anything, they'll just lay down with anything. I actually tried, stepping out of my type for a bit, and I only did it once, and I never went back because it doesn't work. It's like I'm forcing myself to say, okay, I like what I'm looking at, but I don't. I just don't. So yeah, but basically, yeah, she's right. The fashion industry is one of the bigger problems.
Is that most of the people who work in the fashion and beauty industry are gay men and women. This is funny to me for a number of reasons, right? Because gay men and women are the people who are dominating and controlling the beauty and fashion industry, they are the ones who are actually in control of the beauty standards. But yet we always blame straight men. Like we'll always say things like, oh, it's because of the patriarchy and the male gaze. And it is the male gaze. Yeah, it is because of the male gaze. Women and male gaze are controlling the beauty and fashion industry. And so whenever we see all these new beauty fashion trends changing, etc., it's not straight men who are doing that. Of course, there are straight men who also work in fashion and beauty, but they are a small minority in comparison. So we've pretty much established that for thousands of years, men have been attracted to a very refined body type, which is of course the hourglass beauty. Now, why though? Why are men so drawn to that body type? A study was cited in the article Hourglass Figures Affect Men's Brains Like a Drug. They had 14 men with an average age of around 25. And so how they did this was they had the men rate 7 women's photos. So what they did was they showed the men photos of the women pre-plastic surgery, and then they showed the men photos of the same women post-plastic surgery, but she'd had, in the second photo, she had plastic surgery to enhance her hips and the bum to give her more of like an hourglass form. And so as they were showing them these photos, they were also taking brain scans. And what they found was that the brain activity, when they looked at the after photos, when the women looked more curvaceous, activated parts of the brain linked with dopamine rewards. These are the same parts of the brain that typically activate when we consume things like alcohol and drugs. And so it's thought that men have evolved to be very attracted to this body type because it's a sign of fertility and good health. Some have even suggested that this brain activity could give us some insight into what makes men more likely to develop pornography addictions compared to women.
Yeah, so basically that's it. So she's right, 100%. You know, like we always say that attraction is not a choice, and the same thing, she did the same thing for what women find attractive, the features in men. And all of it is, it's not really difficult to just say that, well, it's not their fault or it's not their choice, because right now, and a simple example is this: you'd be walking like a dude. Every dude understands this. You're walking down the road, like I'll never forget this. I'll never forget this. So I was writing my exam a few months ago. I think it was just a month ago, actually. And when I was, and I mismatched the dates. I went on the wrong date that because it's a long story. I was just too busy in my job, and when I started scheduling things, I just had it in my head that it's that date. And then when I went to the exam, I got there, missed the exam. I couldn't write the exam. I had to re-register, stuff like that. And I was so pissed because I had wasted so much money, right? And I had to now pay again, which I did, and I wrote it and I passed. So yay! But that day I was so angry. I'm like, I just wasted, $150. What's wrong with me? But my walk from that place where I took the exam to where I parked my car, no matter how angry I was, every time I passed by, I don't remember all the people that I passed by, of course, even the girls that were attractive, I remember their faces. But I do remember turning my head, at certain intervals. When I found something that was extremely attractive, I still turned my head. I didn't do that on purpose. It wasn't the patriarchy saying, okay, do it. No, it wasn't that. It was just natural. I didn't have well, there was, but the attention being taken away from me from my suffering of regret and sorrow for my exam, that attention being diverted, that wasn't my choice. I had to then choose to bring back my attention to something else. But then the attention going away, that wasn't my fault. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, that's why men are fat phobic and hate fat people and would rather just, be sitting on their high thrones and saying, go back if your body is not an hourglass. And yeah, that's Frosty, and I am out. And don't forget to go watch your video and also like, sub, comment on this channel as well. So peace.